Today we're going to be working on Leetcode question number 355 and design Twitter. Design a simplified version of Twitter where users can post tweets, follow, unfollow another user, and is able to see the 10 most recent tweets in the user's news feed. Implement the Twitter class. Twitter function is going to initialize the Twitter object. Post tweet is going to be the user and its tweet ID, and then the list of integer get news feed is gonna give you the user ID, and we're gonna be returning 10 most recent tweet IDs in the user's news feed. Each item in the news feed must be posted by user who the user followed and by the user themselves. So we're gonna keep the record of both of those kind of tweets. Okay, tweets must be ordered from most recent to least recent. Okay, most recent to the least recent. So we're also going to be using the priority queue for that. Okay, follow is going to be a user ID and the followeeId. So first the user ID and then the ID of the person who the user is following. Unfollow is again the user ID and the followeeId. Okay, for this one, what we're gonna have like a global things with a global scope is a timestamp. So for that we'll say private static int timestamp, which is equal to 0. Okay, and then we're gonna have our map, which is basically an integer which is gonna like the ID associated to the user. So for that we're gonna say private a map with an integer and an object of type user. It's gonna call user map. I'm gonna call it user map. Okay, we will be initializing it soon. So there are two other things which we're gonna use. Again, one is gonna be the user, and the other one is gonna be called the tweet, so that we can actually like basically do the timestamp. And so we want that object to private class tweet. Okay, it's gonna have an ID. It's gonna have a time, and it's gonna have like a tweet which is gonna basically point to the new tweet. So for that we'll just say public tweet next. So this tweet is gonna be like a linked list, which is where it's gonna be pointing to some other tweet. Okay, and then we're gonna initialize that with the constructor. Tweet is gonna be getting an ID, so we're gonna say that this dot ID is equal to this incoming ID. Time is just whatever the timestamp is. Increment that, and that's gonna become equal to time, and the next is gonna be equal to initially gonna be equal to null. Our other object, other class is gonna be the user one. We're gonna say class user. Okay, for this one we're gonna again have the user ID private and ID. We're gonna have a set where we're gonna be telling that which other users this user is gonna be following. So public set of an integer followed. Okay, and then we're gonna have a head tweet. So a tweet like which is gonna be the first tweet. So every single time when a new tweet is being tweeted by this user or another person who he is following, so this is gonna get updated. Tweet underscore head. We're gonna do a few things with it. We're gonna have a function called like we're gonna initialize it with a constructor it will be getting an ID. Just like the tweet, we're gonna assign this ID equals to the incoming ID. We're gonna say that the followed is gonna be initialized to a new hash set, and the follow is gonna have this ID. Follow is gonna be a function we're gonna be defining soon. So basically it will just tell you that first like it should follow itself. That is gonna be because when the user is created, he's gonna start following himself right away. Tweet head is gonna be equal to null in the beginning. It's also gonna have follow, so public void follow and ID. Okay, where we're gonna be adding that ID in the followed set. Okay, it's also gonna have unfollow. A user should be able to unfollow. It's gonna take that ID and remove it from that set. So followed dot remove that ID. Okay, what else? And he should be able to post. So public void post and the ID and ID. And when he's posting it, basically we are interested in updating the tweet head. So we're gonna say because he posted, we're gonna create a new tweet where the new tweet, we're gonna give it an ID, and then the t dot next is gonna be equal to our tweet head, and we're gonna update our tweet head to this new tweet. Okay, nice. So we are basically done with this one. Now we're gonna initiate when the Twitter comes, and we're gonna be making use of this user map. So we're just saying user map is gonna be equal to new hash set. No, sorry, hash map. And we can say it takes an integer and a user. Okay, the first thing is the post tweet, right? When you are posting a tweet, what exactly are we doing in the post tweet? So basically we check the map and say that if the user exists, right? If the user exists, what should we do? If the user exists, we should just post it, right? So if user map dot contains key user ID, right? So if it does not have it, so basically if we don't have that, if we have that user, right? So we're not gonna be entering this one if we have that user. So if we have that user, all we're gonna be doing is the user map dot put, take that ID, actually first get it user ID, right, and then post it with that new ID, tweet ID. Let's say if the user does not exist, then we're gonna be creating the user u is equal to new user with the user ID, and we also need to put that same user in the map, user dot put this user ID and this new user, right? So that should do for the post tweet. So one thing is we need to now we're going to be working on the getNewsFeed, right? So for this one, because we need a list of integer back, so let's just define that. List of integer is going to be equal to result is equal to new array list. Actually just do the linked list, both should work. Okay, Okay, the first thing is he's asking about the user feed, right? So the user should exist, right? So let's just make do that sanity check, that what if the user does not even exist. So if the contains key is not true for this user ID, we know we're gonna be returning a result. Nothing is gonna be in the result. Okay, now we need to get the users which are being followed by this user, right? So for that, user map dot get, if I do the user ID, so I have the user now. So once I have the user, I can actually check the set of users he is following. So followed, so I can do that. So that's gonna give me a set of what user, right? Okay, actually those, it's gonna give me an integer. It's gonna give me an integer of you. We're gonna call them users. So follow. If you check at the followed, it's gonna give you a set, and the set is basically a set of integers. Okay, so we have the users now, right? And then we're gonna be using the priority queue based on the timing when they put the and it's gonna be like in a descending in a it's gonna be in an order where the most recent one is gonna be has the priority. So priority queue which takes a tweet, we're gonna call it our queue. It is equal to a new priority queue, okay, of tweet. Okay, and we are gonna define it. It's gonna have the users dot size. That's how big that is gonna be. And other than the size, we're also gonna say that how if it is getting A and B, what it should do is like it should return B based on B time minus A dot time. So once we have it, okay, so it's okay. Now we're gonna get the user from this list of users, okay, and for every single one we're gonna say that the tweet t is basically equal to we're gonna get the header and then move the header to the next one and then get the new tweet, and that's how we're gonna fill it up. So we are filling it up filling up our priority queue, right? So for that we'll say user map dot get user. This is gonna give us a user, and then we're gonna do is that tweet head. So it's gonna give us the tweet on the head itself if it is not equal to null, right? If t uh, is not equal to null, we can put it into the queue dot add that t. Okay, okay, okay. Now what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna say our n is equal to 0, right? And we have two things. While our queue is not empty, and we also wanna make sure that we don't wanna return more than 10 values is less than 10. Well, these two things, because that's in the problem statement, we're gonna say that the tweet t is equal to q dot poll and then the result dot add that t.id, and then we're gonna increment our pointer, and then if the t dot next is not equal to null, we know that we can q dot add that t dot next, because we want to fill it again, right? Yes, and in the end, once we come out of this while loop, we can just return the result, and that should be enough for the getNewsFeed. Now the last two things are the follow and unfollow. Follow is basically saying that if the user map dot contains key follow our ID. So basically we are checking that if that follower ID basically does not exist, right? So we're gonna create it for him, right? But if it does, we wanna see that if the followeeId exists or not. Again, if it does not exist, we're gonna create it. If both of them exist, all we need to do is to say that get that user map dot get follow our id dot followeeId. Okay, that looks good. Now we just need to create the new users if they don't exist. User map dot put follower id with that user. So very similar things over here. User u is equal to new user of follow eid. User map dot put follow eid with you. Okay, the last thing is the unfollow one. Again, if any of them does not exist, we can just return no, there is no need to do anything else. So if the user map says that I don't have contains key for follower ID, okay, I don't have it, or I don't have contains key for followeeId, we can just return. No need to do anything else. Otherwise, if both of them do exist, we want to say that give me that user.
I only see me and somebody else.
Okay, refresh it. Okay, we're gonna get that user, which is the follower ID dot unfollow and follow eid. So there is an advantage we are actually making use of using these classes of the class, because this unfollow is already defined in the user. Okay, we cannot find the symbol for priority map integer. Time, which one should we keep going on? Timestamp, time stamp. user map should be user map follow ID should be follower ID. This is looking good, and it did pass all the test cases.